And with that, I'm going to turn it over to you, Greg.
All right, thank you. I'm going to share my screen and pull up the PowerPoint. First of all, I want to thank Provo Canyon for this opportunity. I love what Provo Canyon does and the amazing differences they make. We have partnered with them for over 20 years. So we're grateful. Jeremy and Mike, grateful for everything you do. So I'm going to talk about what we know and what we do not know about youth suicide. My presentation comes from 4 areas. When SAMHSA has been one of our partners from the very beginning, the Substance Abuse Mental Health Agency for the United States. They've opened up their libraries and have been very supportive, as well as SPROC. And then I've had the chance to oversee a crisis team. We had about 40 members on the team and have responded personally to over 20, and then as a consultant, another 30 or 40 youth suicides. The youngest suicide I've worked with is a 4th grader. Wasatch Mental Health is one of our partners. So, and then the last part is in visiting with a lot of young people, whether it's been in the emergency room where I've been called in, or working with families and faith-based groups, and then of course a lot of research. So the presentation comes from multiple areas of personal experience. I'm going to start with the concept of the basic principle of mental health. And I know I'm talking to the experts, and so I think it's just a good daily reminder that, you know, and we do a lot of faith-based presentations, and we've trained over 70,000 people now. And one of the things I try to remind us is that all of us are on the front lines of mental health care, whether a therapist, a trainer, whether we're a parent or a coach, a teacher, faith-based group, or whatever. Understand that depression is a disease, and it's not a failure of the will or a triumph of self-indulgence. And too many times we expect people just to get over it. And you experts know as well as I do that there is no magical pill. There is not the ability to just get over it. Along with that, for the past 100 years in public health, we've told individuals that if you're struggling, let me know, and I'll do everything I can to help you. Just let me know when you're hurting. The challenge is, in most cases, those struggling with the severe depression or mental illness will not ask for help. They're embarrassed, and in many cases, they don't want anybody to know. And having experienced that with close friends and family members and many of my students, I'm a former high school principal in Provo School District, an associate superintendent, and I have some of my colleagues that are on board from Provo, thank you, and some friends from Alpine and other school districts. We knew that we had to change the model, and that we have to stop telling these people that are struggling, if you're hurting, let me know, right? Because they're embarrassed and struggling. But what we have to do is have the courage to reach out to individuals who are struggling, rather than waiting for them to ask for help. And that's what we train now. We're in 1,100 schools with the Hope Squads around the world, and over 50,000 young Hope Squad people. We train them every day. When you see a peer struggling in class, in the hallway, a friend in school, please reach out to them. Don't wait for them to come to you. So what do we not know about youth suicide? So there's a lot of information and data out there. Please remember that, you know, with our research, we're usually 2 years behind. So if you look at what the CDC does and some of the other programs, understand that most of that research is 2 years behind where we're at right now. But there's some new information out of the CDC and other areas that is available. One of the biggest challenges is that teen suicide is on the rise, and no one knows why. And this is pre-COVID. So I'm going to talk about COVID, but this is even pre-COVID. Report pre-COVID revealed that teenage suicide rates have increased exponentially in the past decade. If you look at suicide rates from 2007 to 2018, 50% increase. The rate of 6.8 deaths per 100,000 people between the ages of 10. Now think about that, 10 years old, elementary school, and 24 has jumped to about 10.8 deaths. The rise in teenage suicide specifically has outpaced the increase in suicides overall. And I think it's one of the things that the CDC is worried about the most. There's a professor out of Yale, and I wish I could remember his name, but he talks a lot about what we're seeing in the rise of females. We all know that females attempt more than males, but because of the aggressive behaviors we're seeing with females, we're starting to see more completions. Washington Post, I thought this was an interesting article. A colleague of mine sent us that truth is anyone who says that they definitely know what is causing suicide, doesn't know what they're talking about. So this is Ursa Whiteside, a researcher at the University of Washington. And I love her comment that this is such a complex problem. And we keep looking for easy answers for it, and they're not there. So there are many explanations. These are kind of the three that have risen to the top. Rise of social media. And it's not just the rise of social media, but it's now the cell phone that every child has. We know that that's a complication and it's an impact, but there's fascinating research that's come out with it. More demanding academic schedules in school. And then, of course, I hear a lot, the Netflix 13 Reasons Why. So one of the things that makes it difficult to study is that there's a grain of truth to many of these explanations. And I always like to say that two people can be right at the same time. Heavy social media use has been linked to higher rates of depression and low self-esteem. However, the challenge is it's unknown whether social media use has any correlation with higher rates of self-harm and then leading to suicide specifically. Professor Coyne at BYU has a fascinating study that we use in talking about social media impact on the families. Another study found that teenage suicide rates rose slightly following the release of 13 Reasons Why. I was asked to do an article for the Deseret News when 13 Reasons Why was coming out, and I begged parents not to watch it and not to let their kids watch it, but if they were going to watch it with their children. And couldn't believe the hate mail I received from around the world, and from educators and mental health experts and others saying these kinds of shows are important for our young people. But what we do know is it does impact them, and it impacts those young people differently. The correlation does not equal causation, and that's one of the things that's interesting. And we really caution against isolating one cause. The CDC came out, they were invited to come out and do a study invited by the health department back in 2000, and I think it was 12 or 13. And all they did was analyze the data. They did not do any interviews or whatever across the state of Utah with any of those of us who were in the trenches. But what they were trying to show was the impact of, what was the causation? And one of the things that rose to the top was out of the 127 young people that they looked at, there was a high percentage. I think it was 30%, 28%. I don't remember exactly the numbers, but had taken their lives after their phones had been taken away. Well, unfortunately, that kind of hit the press. And as we travel throughout the state doing faith-based training and training educators and community folks, I was amazed at the number of times parents would tell me that I can't take my child's phone away because it'll cause them to kill themselves. So, we have to be really careful about that one factor that causes young people to take their life. I love what Dr. Foreman said. She said that regardless of what the external factors may or may not be contributing, it is much more likely there are very complex things going on in society, and that we just haven't been able to understand suicide well enough. And I hear that a lot from my colleagues. Dr. Doug Gray, who just retired, child psychiatrist from the University of Utah, talks a lot about that. What we do know is that there are certain factors, and these are the things that rise to the top. The history of mental illness, substance use, that put teenagers at increased risk for their own lives. And we'll talk about that a little later. But the reality is that we as mental health establishments, we simply don't have enough research to draw firm scientific conclusions about what causes this spike in suicide. And I'll go back to one of the original things that we talk about, and that is suicide is very complex and it's very individualized. And what is an irksome for one young person may be enough to push the other young person off the edge. So what do we know about youth suicide? What are the things that we really know? So the first question I want to ask is, how many of you believe youth suicides rates increased during COVID? How many of you think that it went up? So if you'll just go into the chat room and show how many that you think. I'm going to wait just a second. So put your message in. Yes. Okay. So I'm seeing a lot of yeses, a couple of no's, not in Utah. Okay. Carol, thank you for that. Let's see. So here's what we know. Social distancing has caused social isolation. The last 2 years, and I come from a family of educators. My son is an assistant principal. I have brother-in-laws that are principals, assistant superintendents, counselors, teachers, you name it. And as we talk about it and discuss it, this second year is almost, if not worse than the first year, because we believe we haven't recovered enough from last year to deal with what's happening to us this year. But here's the fascinating research. The notion that lockdown increased the rate of death by suicide last year has become common knowledge. Superintendent down in Las Vegas, 5th largest school district in the United States, they lost, I think it was 16 young people, made a big stand about it and said, we're losing more kids than we've ever lost before, and suicide is out of control. So what we thought would happen during the pandemic, and I was one of those, I actually thought, hang on, because we're going to be in big trouble and we're going to lose a lot of young people. And we believe that closing down schools, pulling them away from each other, would lead to a huge increase in youth suicide. But what we know is that closing down schools did not lead to that increase. In fact, what happened was kids were out of school, so there was less bullying going on. What we know is that families were staying home and they were reconnecting and spending time together. Nope. And that parents and kids had meals together, played games, watched movies, instead of jumping in that van and going to those 20 different stops a day and running from place to place. My wife made a comment the other day. She's a therapist with the VA, specializes in PTSD. And she said, I almost want to go back to 2019 when we were able to really be by ourselves and not be overwhelmed by society. And that's what happened. So what did happen was younger adults were more likely to report symptoms of anxiety or depressive disorders. So we saw a huge spike in that. You can see the ages 18 to 24, 56% hit. While we did see youth suicides continue, so they didn't disappear. We did not see the increase that everyone talks about. But what happened is, because of those families, if you had a good, healthy family that you could reconnect with, what we do know is that those individuals who were struggling before COVID, it just intensified for them. But the overall total number across the United States did not go up. However, having said that, what we are worried about is now the result from the pandemic. We are seeing a huge increase, and I know you're the expert, and you deal with it every single day. Anxiety and depression, mental health services, now it's 2 to 3 weeks to even be able to see a therapist. In some communities I've talked with, it's 2 to 3 months to see a psychiatrist. And we both know kids can't wait, right? So as I mentioned earlier before, some kids may have actually been protected from harm by being out of school because their stressors in school were being bullied, being misgendered, having access to substances through peers, other things that way. While most youth are healthy, physical, and emotional, what we do know is 1 in every 4 to 5 youth in the general population meet criteria for a lifetime mental disorder. impulsivity, making comments about wanting to die, giving away items of value, sentiment, pulling away from families. And then also in our state, and I was just back in the Bible Belt, and they're experiencing the same thing we are. We have a lot of guilt around religion and other things that way. So what do we do, right? The presence or absence of various combinations of protective and risk, while they do contribute, what we know is that efforts by promoting that positive mental health and prevent or minimize mental health problems, that those protective factors can actually kick in and prevent that suicide. So despite these challenges for most youth, mental health distress is not permanent, and in most cases can successfully navigate that challenge that comes from experiencing mental health disorder with, of course, treatment, peer support, professional support, strong family, social support network. I can't say enough about Provo Canyon Hospital, Intermount Healthcare, mental health agencies. We have 14 in the state of Utah, and they are our best friends. We could not be successful with what we do without them. Talking about the latest data, and here's what we know. Look at the numbers that we're facing, and Utah is no different. 19% of young people seriously considered attempting suicide. That's 1 out of 5. 16% actually made a plan. 9% actually attempted, and then 3% it was serious enough that they had to be treated by a doctor. I'm just going to share a video because one of the things that I really want to highlight today is that when my expertise is contagion and copycat postvention. So I get called in a lot to work with schools, to work with communities after there's 3 or 4 suicides, all the way up to 10 suicides in 1 year. And one of the things that I always start out with by stating, we always have a community meeting. So we bring the mayor, the city council, superintendents, school leaders, business leaders, mental health folks, and we have a discussion. And one of the first things I talk about is that suicide is not a school issue. It's a society challenge. It's a community challenge. There's no doubt that schools are affected by it and impacted, and sometimes may even be the cause. But the reality is it's because of the concentration of young people, and that our mantra, Hope for Utah and Hope Squad, is that while it takes an entire village to raise a child, we believe it takes an entire community to save one. And our Hope Squad program, of course, is peer-to-peer, because what we do know is 7 out of 10 young people who take their lives will tell a friend, and that friend will never tell an adult. And so we work on breaking that barrier, that message of silence, and helping young people know the value. But the second part of it is it's going to take all of us. And it is one of the things that I'm proud of being associated in such an amazing state like the state of Utah, because we have every organization involved. We do have businesses, we do have hospitals, we have mental health agencies, we have education, and we do have faith-based groups. I mean, the state of Utah is one of the few states in the entire state that does a faith-based suicide prevention conference annually. Every single year, we bring 200 to 300 faith-based leaders together to train them on the latest trends. So I want to share this video just because I think it shows the impact of young people that sometimes we don't recognize or give them enough credit, of the ability to influence their peers. So like I just mentioned, that young person who was just talking was agreeing with everything I said. So this is a video. I had a chance to be involved with it a little bit. We had, the Church of Jesus Christ Latter-day Saints actually did this for us so that we could use it to promote in the community. But it really shows the power of a community coming together to prevent suicide. Yeah.
In high schools across the country, a crisis. Who here knows somebody personally who's contemplated suicide? Wow. Every single one of you. Suicide, now the second leading cause of death between the ages of 10 and 18. For Utah Principal Dr. Greg Hudnall, it's more than statistics after he was called to identify the body of one of his 14-year-old students.
I literally threw up and sobbed. I made a vow that I would do everything that I could to help prevent suicide.
He founded Hope Squad, a way to help kids change how they talk about mental illness.
Those young people feel like they're the only one, that they're embarrassed, they're struggling.
The program gives students the tools to recognize those in need and get them help.
I don't think that most people understand that people do say that they're going to commit suicide most of the time before they do.
There are now more than 500 squads across 18 states and Canada. Another 100 will begin next year.
We're having this connection now, we're having this relationship now, and I care about you.
Students are chosen by their peers and specially trained, meeting regularly. This is Hope Squad's first year in Mason, Ohio, and the first year without a suicide since Abby Gadio started at the school 4 years ago.
Do you think Hope Squad has saved lives this year? For sure. I think that because of Hope Squad, we get to those students early enough.
That stigma is breaking down. Students are willing to accept help.
Fifth grader Valerie Golvar recently spoke up when she saw a friend was cutting herself.
She told me about it and said, "Don't tell anyone." And my immediate reaction was to go straight to a Hope Squad advisor or an adult.
A move that may have made all the difference for that student and her peers.
The best part about Hope Squad is just knowing that you're able to help
and hope at a time they need it most. Kristen Dahlgren, NBC News, Mason, Ohio.
Hey, NBC News fans, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe.
So I use that, and there's a lot of different comments in the chat about talking about during COVID. COVID really kicked in, 2020, when you look at March, when it started affecting us across the country, and we're still being affected by it. So it's still going on. And it is, I use COVID in a generic term. So, but talking about suicide, this is what we do know, is that the research shows that half of all the lifetime cases of mental illness begin by age 14. And what we know is that they interview thousands and thousands of adults who have attempted suicide. And one of the things they ask them is, at what age did you start to struggle? What age did you notice that there were things happening inside that were happening to you? And so it's one of the things that we're really trying to focus on, is to identify those younger people early on so that we can get them to you professionals for help, whether it's medication, whether it's, CBT, whatever it is that may help them. Multiple choices, multiple reasons, but it's getting involved earlier in their life. The challenge for all of us is there's no single cause for suicide. But what we do know, and I'm excited because Provo Canyon, the next session they have, you'll have a professional talking about some of the things that parents can do and you can do as professionals. But what we do know is it often occurs when those stressors exceed their current coping abilities to deal with that crisis in their life for that moment. And we also know that, by far we lose more adults than we lose young people. And young people for me is up to age 24, 26. For every adult that takes their life by suicide, there is upwards of 25 to 30 other adults that attempt. For every young person that takes their life by suicide, there's upwards of 100 to 150. And I've seen statistics even as high as 200 other young people that attempt suicide. The challenge with it is many times, when you look at Joyner's research, one of the premier researchers, he talks about the concept that we really don't know unless they really hurt themselves. So many people attempt, and family members and friends don't even know that they attempted. I love this slide. I picked this up from a research comment by a professor that age 10 is now the new age 16. We're not imagining it. Childhood is getting shorter. Experts say typical teen behaviors, and that's that monitor. That's how they're able to graph it, is that they're looking at typical teen behaviors are becoming common among kids ages 8 to 12. Girls wear makeup, listen to hip hop, chat on Facebook. Boys drop toys for iPods, get highlights in their hair, think parents are annoying, etc. You know, when I was with the Provo School District, we even had a sixth grader that was pregnant that we had to deal with. You know, we no longer have the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, even up into the 90s of the night games and people playing outside and where it was safe and available. We now have, you know, you drive by parks and they're empty. You don't see those kids picking up games and doing other things. We see many times young people in front of screens. Teenage brain, of course, you know this better than I do. Adolescent profound brain growth. Greatest change is brain responsible for that impulse, decision making, planning, emotional occur in that prefrontal cortex. And it's not fully developed until, you know, age 25, you know, even a little bit older. And the challenge with this, it's different and unique for a lot of young people. I hear a lot when I go out and do presentations or when we're working with families, they're just doing it for attention. But what we do know is that many young people do not spend a lot of time planning to kill themselves. Now, adults will tend to spend more time, although many adults fit right into the same category. But I've known of adults that have taken months, even a year, to save up enough money, buy a certain kind of gun, go to a certain place to take their life, or on an anniversary where they lost a family member or a friend. But what we do see with young people, because of that impulsivity, because of other things, that we call it the 24 to 48 hour window. Romantic breakup, disciplinary action, something that's pushed them over the edge, and they just didn't have that ability to deal with those challenges that are happening, that lack of coping skill. Klopp's one of my favorite researchers. He's also a former therapist, and I think he's by far one of the best out there. You can read his book. He's got a great book out there on suicide and working as a therapist. You can Google it. It's on Amazon. But he talks about the concept that suicide never occurs outside of the context of a major social stressor. And we do know that one of the top reasons young people take their lives is they feel all alone, they feel isolated. And there's no doubt that our experience with COVID really did affect us because of that isolation, especially if you have a family that may not be as close, or the inability to reach out. But it's intolerable for many individuals. One of the things I learned, and I would strongly encourage you therapists to consider, is when you meet with young people, is tell me about your friends. It's one of the first things when I go in and work with a school and I'm working with some kids that are severely at risk. You know, I'll meet with a young lady and say, hey, give me the names of two of your best friends. And she'll say, well, there's Sally. And then I'll ask, well, what's Sally's last name? I don't know. Where does Sally live? I don't know. That's not a close friend. That's a classmate. And so we do know building friendships. And so we try to train parents and others. We do a lot of activities within the school, friendship clubs in the elementary, and sometimes even in the middle school, different things that way. We do know, as I mentioned earlier, the substance-related disorders for self-management. Young adults with undetected, undiagnosed, untreated, emerging mental disorders, highly likely to experiment with substances. They find in that drug that temporary relief. You can see in the bottom right corner, that's Jack Klott. You can see that book. It's Suicide and Psychological Pain. It's very well done. As a high school principal, when I would pop a young person for smoking pot, I'd bring them into my office. I'd have my SRO there and ask, you know, Johnny, why do you smoke pot? And invariably, the young people would say, helps me feel normal, helps me get through the day, right? They find in that drug that temporary relief. Victims of bullying, I mean, the 10-year-old that took their life, that's on KSL, that they just talked about, was an individual the parents said they were bullied. Whether they were or not, I don't know. But what we do know is that it goes on, and about 8 to 12% of young people that take their lives are kids that are bullied. You know, that bullying triggers themes of abandonment, isolation, rejection, devaluation. Of course, the more severe, the higher the rate. LGBTQ adolescents most vulnerable to suicide ideation and attempts. They often experience that message of rejection from their primary support system. Remember what Maslow says: families provide food, clothing, shelter, and safety. I remember having a mother standing next to me, and she's turned to her 15-year-old daughter and said, "If you come out, your father and I will disown you." So these are the kids that get rejected by their primary support system, and then they go out into the community, and they're the ones by far that are bullied within our schools and unfortunately within our communities. When I do get called out to work with schools and communities, I would share with you that this is probably one of the top reasons: the academic performance anxiety. Young adults who believe that affirmation and love are won and earned are the most vulnerable. There's no capacity to psychologically manage failure. We have created a whole new generation of young people who have never been allowed to fail. And it's that parent that swoops down and takes, because as adults, we remember our shame, our embarrassment, and we don't want our kids to go through that. What we forget is that's what helped build our resiliency. So I try to tell parents, please let your child fail, but be there with them to help pick up the pieces. And I'm not talking a severe failure, but getting an A- instead of an A is okay. Getting cut from a team may be difficult, but those are things that are part of life, and helping them learn how to cope with those crises in their moment can be really helpful with them later on. I'm going to skip that one. So as we go along, I'd like you to share something that has jumped out with you from this presentation so far. When we go in and do faith-based presentations, we'll do a Saturday or Sunday Sabbath day presentation to 200-300 individuals. And then we always do the youth 2 weeks later. We train the adults, the parents, youth leaders, and then we do the young people later on. So we've collected hundreds and hundreds of comments and questions, because we always ask the youth, what's your biggest challenge? What are the things you want us to talk about? So we have a great collection of those. But I would also like feedback on anything that may have jumped out or may have been new to you from this presentation, realizing that you're all professional and all experts versus dealing with just the common folks within our other presentations. So I'd love for you to add those comments. So what are the problems that increase suicide risk? We know prior suicide attempt, that if you've attempted, and especially if you have not received any professional help, you're 50% more likely to attempt than someone else. Mental health disorders, we know history of trauma or abuse by age 6 really raises you to the top, especially if you've not received help. Family history, direct bloodline, grandma, grandpa, aunt, uncle, brother, or sister have taken their life, then you're at risk. And then, of course, we talked about that lack of social support. What are the protective factors? What are the things that really help us? And, it was what we talked about with COVID, right? It's one meal a day as a family with no electronic devices. I beg with parents, please take your child's phone away every night at 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock so they can sleep and not feel like they have to be a therapist to their friends. But then I challenge parents to have one meal a day so that they know that there's a level of support. Then, of course, contact with a caring person, sense of connection, positive self-esteem, coping, and then access to or care for mental, physical, substance abuse. So what are the warning signs of situational? What we do know is recent loss of a loved one, survival of a previous suicide I talked about, loss of prestige, serious illness, family history we talked about, close friend dies by suicide, especially if they knew about it but didn't do it. They just knew about it and didn't do anything. What are the behaviors? What are the things that they're going through that you can notice? One of the top things is talking or writing about death or suicide. I had a mother call me. She had been at one of our trainings, and she had got on the family computer after her daughter had been on it, and she saw all these sites of how to kill yourself so that your parents wouldn't find out. That's a pretty good warning sign, right? Giving away personal possessions, not participating in regular activities. So you're starting to see the behaviors change. And you know as well as I know, the DSM-5 talks about the 2 weeks and other things. But what we're seeing with young people is it's immediate. It frightens me, the suicides that I've been involved with. romantic breakup the day before, and that night the young person takes their life. Falling grades, ending close relationships. So what are the emotional? What are they feeling on the inside? You know, a lot of kids I talk with, they feel like they're a failure. They just feel like they can't stand up in society against their peers. Overwhelming sadness. They just cry at the drop of a hat. Pull away from other things. Nothing is of interest like they did in the past. Feelings of hopelessness, helplessness, feeling of burden. Joyner talks about top 2 reasons. I feel all alone, or I feel that I'm a burden to others. Withdraw, isolation, and of course, guilt. One of the things that I've learned, adolescents don't want to die. They want the pain to go away. Young man took a gun, held it up under his chin, pulled the trigger, and the bullet exited his eye. And he was in the hospital for a couple of months, and then they asked me to work with him. And one of the questions I asked was, you know, why did you attempt? And I've shared this a lot in my training, so many of you have heard it, but it's just so real to me because he said, my girlfriend broke up with me on Thursday. I figured if I killed myself on Friday, she would feel so bad over the weekend that we would get back together on Monday, right? I mean, it doesn't make sense when you're feeling normal or healthy. But when you're feeling so depressed and overwhelmed, unfortunately, suicide becomes that option. So what not to say and do? I've added this because in our discussions with a lot of young people, they've helped educate me, and I want to pass that on. Many of you already know this, so I know I'm singing to the choir, but it's just something that I like to remind all of us. You know, when you have that person in crisis, I tell parents and others, church leaders, youth leaders, coaches, you know, don't argue. Don't say you have so much to live for, it will hurt your family, or look on the bright side. Don't act shocked or lecture. Don't make them justify their suicidal feelings, and don't try to fix it. What that child needs right then is someone that's just going to listen. I get this from a lot of church leaders and others that, you know, they don't say, you don't mean that. You don't really want to die. But you and I, too many times people say that out of anxiety and fear. But what those young people tell me is that they feel that it's invalidated and dismissive, like it has no meaning, like I really am hurting. You're just not allowing me to hurt or recognizing it. Don't say things could be worse, right? They could be worse, but that knowledge does not inspire joy or hope. Even in the youth's life could be far worse. You know, they're still experiencing a seeming intolerable situation that you and I look at and think, oh, come on, you know, you'll find another boyfriend, you'll make it on another team or whatever. But at that moment, that young person, they've given up hope. Don't say suicide is selfish. I get this a lot. I do radio talk shows with KSL and some other stations, and this is the one that I get people calling suicide is so selfish. But the reality is we are seeing more young people who seriously consider suicide because they feel like they're a burden. I had one young man share with me, he was in the emergency room, tried to take his life, and he talked about, you know, my medication is $30 a pill. Every time I get hospitalized, it's in the thousands of dollars. My parents don't have very good insurance. I have 4 young siblings, and I know I'm the problem. And if I just go away, my family's going to be so much better without me. Don't say suicide is a permanent solution to a temporary problem, right? Temporary for the individual who's depressed, over boyfriend or discipline, but not temporary for a youth who's struggling with a serious chronic mental illness. So what do we say and do? And I know I'm singing to the choir, but I still like to educate, remind ourselves, be a safe person, remain calm and listen, validate and encourage. I like to use the I messages. You know, I noticed you were struggling. What can I do? Instead of, you know, I noticed you did this at dinner. I noticed you were saying these things. Don't be afraid to ask the tough question. I notice you're going through some tough, rough times. Paul Quinnett with QPR, one of my mentors, he always uses the comment, do you ever wish you could go to sleep and never wake up? Sometimes when people feel sad, they have thoughts of harming or killing themselves. Have you ever had such thoughts? And then the other one is, are you thinking about killing yourself? How can I help? You're not alone in this. I'm here for you. You may not believe it, but the way you're feeling could change. I may not be able to understand. I like this one a lot, and I practice it with his parents. I may not be able to understand what you're feeling, but I care about you and I'm here to help. This is the video from the church. I messed up. Kathy came running into my office and said that was the NBC video. I really like this video put out by the church. I just did some presentations to a group of Baptist leaders and others. It's non-religion, but it's a very, very powerful message.
I remember when my father asked me to stay up all night to watch fireflies. I didn't want to, but he was right. It was the most magical thing I'd seen. My mother asked me to stay patient until the chickens got here. I just wanted to pull them out of their eggs and play. I was so glad I waited. This kid I knew asked me to stay on his team. We lost the game, but he became my best friend. And when I became a teenager, everyone kept telling me to stay. Stay focused, stay out of trouble, stay faithful. And all I could think of was the stress, the pressure, the expectations. The things I used to be excited about now seem nothing like I'd imagined. Pointless, heavy. And then people asked, "How are you?" And I said, "Fine." And people said, "Is there anything I can do for you?" And I said, "No." I tried to smile and hide my darkness. I remember waking up on my 17th birthday, wanting to end my life because I felt so much pain, because I felt nothing. So I decided to tell others how I feel. Bring everything hidden into the light, because I knew one of them could help. I remember my dad holding me, my mom and my sister. Now they ask me to stay around for another moment, for another agonizing week, month, even if I couldn't see that tomorrow will get better. And I realized that somewhere in between my new dark existence and all those beautiful moments that I've experienced in the past, I forgot something. I didn't have to stay alone. The pain doesn't fully go away. It still takes many endless conversations, therapy, prayers, medication. But as time goes on, I choose to stay hopeful. I choose to stay, to experience small, simple things I love, to see new places, meet new people, to discover who I am, to be surprised, to be loved. You can choose to stay too.
So I love that video. It's on YouTube, and I think it's entitled "You Can Stay Too," something like that. Kathy just reminded me, we don't give out this presentation, but all of the information is in this book. You can get it on Amazon. It's not that much, but all of the information and data, etc. And then that's our website. It's hopesquad.com, and we have a lot of information for parents, for professionals. Even for young people, etc. So that's it. So I thought I'm going to stop sharing and just see what questions you have, and then I'll be glad to respond to any of them. Let me just share with you, we travel the state and do presentations for free, although we're now starting to charge with chocolate. So if you want we do faith-based, we do community, we train therapists, counselors, educators. We actually travel the world now, but in the state of Utah, we don't charge anything. So, we do about 100 presentations a year. So if you're interested, we'd love to come and do a presentation. If I can't do it, Kathy can do it. Questions that you have?
Hey, Greg.
Yeah, please.
Hey, this is David Young.
Hey,
Hey, I was looking online. Looks like yesterday or this week, KSL had an article. It said BYU researchers identify risks for suicidal behaviors among teens. And kind of skimming the article, I didn't know if you had maybe heard about it. It looked like they developed like an algorithm that predicted with pretty high success. I mean, that's not the best way to put it, but statistically, it seemed like it was a pretty high indicator of risk factors. I was just curious if you kind of had seen that or if they shared anything with you regarding that.
Yeah, that's we actually work with Carl Nelson. He's one of the researchers that was on that, and that's been a journey for them putting that data together. Fascinating research that has come out that they've done. I think we're going to see more and more studies coming up with additional information. Carl is out of the family health department, very, very bright. He just finished being the department chair. He's done some fascinating research on it. He'll be one of our speakers at our conference when we finally get to really do the conference, right? I mean, that has been very devastating to us because of COVID and everything. So yeah, you can go online and look it up. There's a lot more detail that they've left out of it. So they're going to be publishing some new information and other things, David, about it. So we'll keep everybody posted, and it is exciting to see the research coming out of the Utah universities, the University of Utah, BYU. So thanks for that question. I just see religious participation is lowest it's ever been in America. Do you think that contributes to the rise in suicide? I think it's a couple of things. I'm doing a lot of work back in the Bible Belt, and I started out with President Obama's team, invited me to be involved with when we were losing Black Baptist preachers back in the Southern Belt. There was a contagion of suicide that I was involved with. There's no doubt that religion is a resiliency factor if you're accepted and if you're allowed to be part of that group. But I think we have a younger generation of people that are really trying to explore for themselves and moving away from tradition. Even my own son has said to me numerous times, Dad, that's the way you did it as a principal. This is the way I'm going to do it. And these are the new ways, etc. There's no doubt that falling out of that religion can be a risk factor, but many people are leaving all religions, not just the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. I was invited by SAMHSA to go to California. They invited representatives from religion, 2 representatives from each religion. And I was sitting next to a Catholic, I want to say, wasn't a cardinal, it's the step right below a cardinal, and then a Jesuit leader from Texas, and then another individual from Chicago. And they were talking about the number of people that were leaving their faiths. So there's no doubt that can be an impact. Any medication, psychiatric interventions that decrease suicidal ideation? Well, that's a Jeremy answer. That's not, or maybe Brianna or someone, that's out of my area. My area is to identify them at risk and then get them to you experts. That's what we focus on. Any other questions? Or I think we have just a couple more minutes. I'm going back up. Becca, I love your comment. I used to think it was selfish suicide until I lost my brother. Then my eyes were open. Boy, that affects a lot of us that way. Let's see. I believe it's important that we communicate often with our kids. I agree with that. It would be interesting to study families that are high risk and see how COVID changes affected their families. Yeah, it would be. Programs like Hope Squad can be effective if implemented in a functional way. Yeah, programs are only as good as the advisors are. Let's see. Tell me about your friends. Let's see. Others. Any other questions? Been a great group. Thank you for the opportunity. No one has bashed me in the side, so I appreciate that. And you can't slice my tires or put anything on my windshield, so that's good. Having been a former high school principal, I've had everything done to me, so you kind of learn so much. So, Kathy just said one more. I meant that. Let's see. Any suggestions for adults who refuse to get help but continue sharing suicidal ideation? I hear that one a lot everywhere I go. I'll tell you what I tell my family, and I tell others that I'm close to. If you ever say to me that you're hurting or thinking about it, I'm going to get you help. And it may be different, but I'm always going to take it serious. And so please understand that because I've lost too many individuals to suicide, that I don't want to lose you, and I care about you. But then in the end, it is that ultimate decision. We had a young lady who had put a suicide plan together, visited with the parents, and the father said, mind your own business. This is my child, and there's nothing you can do. And he took her out of school, and that night she tried to kill herself. And they were right. There was nothing that we could do, and that's what makes it really tough. And it makes it hard. I see my friends down in St. George and Las Vegas and other places. Bless you for the amazing mental health services you provide. You amazing social workers in schools and school counselors. Thank you for what you do. I did a presentation the other day, and I brag about this, and my wife says, you got to quit bragging. But I got a chance to present at the Idaho State Superintendent's Conference, and I got to present with Rudy, the guy that the movie's about, Rudy. Holy mackerel. He's a lot older like I am. I mean, we're both much older, but I had a great conversation with him, and it was so fun. But he made a comment that I'll never forget when he got up. He said, we're all hurting. We're all hurting. It doesn't matter who you are, whether you're a child or an adult, whether you're an educator, a police officer, a professor, or a businessman. This COVID challenge, we're going to look back on it someday and tell our grandkids about it, how difficult and challenging it was. And there's no doubt it will be one of those things that rises to the top of trying to survive and make it through. But the positive for me is the good thing. It shows that families can be connected if we take time, if we spend time together and get out of that rat race and have meals together and talk with each other. It's amazing what that can do to impact our family. So I'm done. Bless you all. Thank you for what you do. If there's anything that we can ever do for you, let us know. We're here in Utah, and there's no charge. So bless you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Greg. I think, as I looked through and he was answering questions, I think it's having a lot of tools in our toolbox. When the question about the adults, I looked down and saw Teresa's face and thought QPR training. That would be very key in helping with adults and those questions, asking and knowing those questions and being able. But we want to reach out and let you know, if any of you are having issues, looking for help, please reach out to us as the hospital. Please reach out for Hope for Utah and the Hope Squads. There are tools available. There are resources available. We do know it's difficult in some communities, but we all are struggling, and we know there's people out there struggling, and we want to be there for you. So let me just, sorry, let me do this and hurry and share my screen. Okay, there's the code. So if you're looking for CE credit, and let me get back into my chat box real quick. Please don't do any chats right now, everyone. I'm going to put the link. So there is the link for the evaluation. If you want to try to get that, copy it right now, email it to yourself, text it to yourself, whatever. But if you're looking for CE credit, there's the link for the evaluation, and there's the code no 11-9-21, and any secret 11-9-21 is today's date. And jump on, do the CE. I'm going to be honest. I'm going to be honest, it's going to be very hard for me to get that link out to everybody because there's so many people on there. I will try. So if the link doesn't work, email me and I will get you a direct link if it doesn't work on here. Send me an email and I will send you a link for the evaluation, but if it's not working for you. But thank you, Greg, for your time. I think he may have jumped off. I think he was telling me he has another one. Kevin, do you see the code on the screen right now? No, N or KNOW 11921. Any other questions, comments? Thank you for joining us. If you need to jump off, if you've got clients coming in. Again, our next one will be Tuesday, December 14th, and we will have Viosa come in, and she is going to be talking about helping teens overcoming past trauma in their lives. And I'm trying to persuade her to talk a little bit about teaching coping skills and adding that into it. If not, I'll have to have her come on a second time and we'll talk coping skills. It's good to see some of you. I hope you're dry today. We asked earlier if it was raining in your areas. Oh, another thing for those that are on, as I did take an attendance, but like I'm looking right now, the clan of the bear. If you have little shorter names, usernames, I may not know who to send that link to if you don't fill out the evaluation. So again, send me an email and I'll get you the evaluation forms if it's not working for you. When I copy the web page, it just brings up all the participants.
So the district report card, you know,
your email is the one that you sent out the link to, right?
level on everything. His
Hello?
English language arts,
yeah.
that's great.
Sorry,
Is your email address the one that you sent the link out to?
my email address is Michael Dinsmore. Let me see if I can, so we're not using this one.
Michael. Oh, I got it.
So that's my email address. So yeah, if the link's not working for you and you need to get the evaluation form, yeah, just email me and I'll send it to you. I know some people are on certain systems like here at the hospital, it won't let us get on Google Forms. Firewalls restrict that. So
Yeah, I'm double dipping. I'm in a dog arm meeting at the same time. It's very hard. What did I miss?
Oh, Ben, come on. I liked that clan of the bear. That looked pretty good. Yeah, Lisa, I see that you saw your message. Yeah, I'm sure with you, the mental health's probably definitely got Google Forms probably blocked off. I'm sure it's gone up a little bit, so there's the link again to put it at the bottom of all the messages and comments. It's good to see everybody. Thank you again for joining. Thanks, Teresa. Hey, Teresa, before you get off, let me.
Yep. I'm still here.
I know I sent a message because I don't know if you want to answer this to everybody. So I just sent it to you.
Hey, real quick. Hey, real quick. Can I ask Teresa to email me the link? Because what's happening is I click on the link in the chat box to copy it and it takes me there. And my computer's asking for a Google Chrome update and I can't do that.
You've got a firewall. That's what mine does when I'm here at the hospital. And like, even if I'm here at the hospital, but I go off a hotspot, I'm okay. But anytime I'm trying to go through that firewall, it blocks Google Forms. There's certain ones they've set up.
I'm on the VPN because I'm working from home today. So
yeah, so that's probably why it's doing that. So as soon as you get off that firewall, then should be able to get into it and stuff.
So if you could email me the link, then I'll have it.
I just send it to you, Lisa.
Super. Thanks, guys.
You're so welcome.
That was
Teresa, can you send that to me as well? I'm having the same issue at Southwest Center. So
and Michael, I am in the office, just so you know.
Okay. We'll come visit you and see what's going on.
Okay, good deal.
Okay, see you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? I think we just got a handful of us here on here still. Okay, we'll see everybody. Take care. Stay dry.